Well, that's what we're going to talk about now. So why don't we get this started? For those of you that are sticking on, thank you for staying on. We might have some new people, so I'll just do a quick introduction and we'll share this around, of course, for those that couldn't be a part of this session. So I'm Matt Bogosian, the Executive Director of the American Manufacturing Communities Collaborative. And this is a special 30-minute session that we are going to discuss the request for information by the Economic Development Administration regarding how the Regional Technology and Innovation Hub program should be designed. As a little bit of background, this in the CHIPS and Science Act was a $10 billion authorization for a technology hub program. It was modeled after the IMCP initiative. AMCC is really a kind of a successor organization to that IMCP initiative, with many of the regions a part of IMCP forming the membership of AMCC. And so this idea of having technology hubs has been emulated in many federal interventions, and to include the Tech Hub program, the $10 billion Tech Hub program. There's been $500 million appropriated to it. And so, not surprisingly, the agency, the Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration has the responsibility to implement the program, and they want to learn from those who are in the game about what would be best practices and kind of key program elements in developing the program. And so because of our background, we felt, there's a lot of RFIs out there, as you all know. And so, but of all of them, this one certainly seemed like an important one, not only for AMCC to respond to, which we intend to respond to by March 16th, but also encourage regions around the country to individually, respond from your own organization or from your network organization. If your region, has had different, consortia built out based on some kind of federal intervention from, SBA, NSF, EDA, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, fill in the blanks, then you can, that network can speak to this, like what works and what doesn't work. So we did a special session, 30 minutes last week. Once this thing came out, we did a quick 30-minute session, just kind of reviewing the 20 some odd questions. And so that recording is available. That's just a review of what the questions are. There was a little short discussion about potential responses, but we wanted to have a second session, which we're doing today, to talk a little bit more about responses, at least ones that AMCC is thinking about, and wanted to get your input on some of those right now. So as you can see in the slide, if you could go back that last slide, David, if you would. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, and there's links there, and we'll provide links at the end too that you can share. You'll get this PowerPoint. This is also going to be available so you can share and so forth. Okay, thanks, David. Next slide there. Okay, so this is the summary slide of all the questions. It's 22, but you can see that first question is like 6 questions. So yeah, it's almost 30 questions. And after going through all of this, David and I, went through all of this. It's not, in a order that we would, propose. And so, kind of one of the threshold, things I wanted to say is, you don't have to respond to all of this. If you are going to respond individually, or your organization or your network's going to respond, you can just respond, to one question or respond generally. And because that was kind of our feeling as we looked at the first set of questions there, the indicia of a successful tech hub, and then a bunch of sub questions, we started like looking to answer every one specifically, but it almost felt like, we wanted to kind of frame frame the response in the way that made sense to us. And so I want to encourage folks, to bring to it, what you will there. So David, if you put up kind of our kind of framing in response to question 1, the Tech Hub characteristics. So we think that there's a temporal piece, a time piece to this thing that's pretty important, because they're asking, what's a successful Tech Hub look like? And so, after going through all the questions and then coming back, one of the things is like, well, it depends on the period of time that you're talking about. And they get to this in the question 2, but it's also important, I think, in terms of Tech Hub characteristics to address that up front. At least that's what we're thinking right now. And of course, the size and timing of investments, will depend on what, period of time we're talking about. Getting the Tech Hub going, right? That's what we were calling short term. The medium term is for right after the grant period ends. And then the long term, of course, is beyond those initial years. So because we want these Tech Hubs to be sustainable over a generation, if not a century. So there's just some big questions there, and so we wanted to set the stage and make sure that the temporal piece was included in everything, in terms of how they would measure the success of a Tech Hub. And then of course you can see at the bottom there, overall also it depends, what the timing and the amount of investment depends on many of the factors that we'll talk about here in a second. But the priority of the manufacturing industry, and the existing level of maturity of the component parts of that industry that might already exist in the region. We talk in the IMCP about location quotients and things like that. The technologies that the industry needs to thrive, and then the capacity of regional stakeholders. So if you go to the next slide, this is still kind of all in response to question 1. What with these sub questions, so even question 1 alone is a massive one, so this is kind of what we're thinking early on, is we want to make sure that indicia of a successful Tech Hub is, first of all, aiming at the right, target of a sustainable society. It's got to address all elements of sustainable development, economic success, of course, but also DEI, environmental sustainability and security. It also, the program has to prioritize not just all kinds of technologies or all kinds of manufacturing industries, but those deemed essential for American progress. And, we have used, in terms of the industries, those 6, that the administration did as supply chain reports on a year or so ago. So we included those there. And then the technologies we threw out there, those, identified the Manufacturing USA Institute area. And then, of course, the big 6 on the ecosystem of support. Those are important. The geographic diversity, backbone organizations, and then the development of our manufacturing community metrics is also, indicia. You got to prove it up, right? And so anyway, let me stop there and see how folks, what you think about kind of describing these characteristics. Dean, you were active on the last call. Are you guys in California thinking about putting together a response to this RFI? Oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute there, sir.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, at least at a regional level. Haven't had conversations with the state about it at this point.
Good to hear. And then to Linda in Utah, you guys are doing it, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it over to Guy Latender, who's been leading the effort. Guy, would you speak to how Utah is addressing the response?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, we've been working with a group in the state of Utah for, almost a year now, 9 months now, forming around a topic of batteries and critical minerals. And we kind of had a kickoff meeting last week. with, representatives from university, lots of industry support, regional economic development folks, finance groups, Idaho National Labs, things like that. And we're probably, if not today, tomorrow, are going to survey those folks in the manner, Matt, that you described. You don't have to answer every question, but, answer as many as you can that you have, some passion for. And then we'll collate with the state support and curate the response from, I think we have over 35 partners in this coalition that we've managed to grow so far.
Great. Thanks, Guy. It's good to
And
hear your
then
voice. Yeah.
Just to finish up on that, in the state of Utah, LSI, and I know that James Taylor is on, LSI has the contract with the governor's office. JT, do you want to talk about how the governor's office is responding to the tech hubs? Is he on mute?
Yeah, sorry, I was just on mute. Yeah, upon request, the governor's office will be able to support with grant writing capabilities and to help go after some of this work. So we'll have support from the governor's office level down, and LSI will kind of lead on that front to help put this thing together.
Yeah, no, I that's good to hear. Every organization is going to have to figure out a process for doing it. What we're trying to get at here is what is the substance of the design of the program. They're asking us, they're asking you. I mean, Stephanie was on from the state of Washington was on the call when we just went through the questions last week, and I see Carolyn and Deloitte also from the state of Washington. I know, Stephanie, do you see the substance that we put here in this kind of indicia of a successful tech hub? How does that read to you guys in the Washington region?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for doing this call again. We actually did a similar call with our industry ecosystems last week. So it's just great to see all this mobilization. I would just first say that I love the questions that EDA is asking, because they indicate to me that they're coming from a place of curiosity and they're asking the right questions. We went through a similar process when we built our Innovation Cluster Accelerator program about 2 years ago. And we've spent a lot of time learning from the global innovation cluster community, which innovation clusters, regional tech hubs, it's all the same, just called different things. I think you're spot on with what you've got outlined here. And I would just add, as we think about that development of the ecosystem and the support, the backbone organization, really thinking about the amount of time and effort it takes to truly get people to come to the table and work together. And so I think that 5 to 10 year timeline that you were recommending really aligns well with that. And then also when we think about, factors for success, what we see in the global innovation cluster world is that it needs to be industry led as much as possible. And that you really need a firm foundation of thinking about market development, because that's what's going to build a long-term value proposition for industry involvement that helps sustain this effort beyond the EDA Tech Hub funding. And that's something that we've been spending a lot of time building here in Washington State. But we do plan to the State Department of Commerce will be submitting a full response, largely based on our experience building our Innovation Cluster Accelerator. And then I'm also working with the TCI Network, which is a global collective of innovation clusters around the world, working with them as well on a potential response. And then we've got a handful of partners here in Washington State that plan to provide some insights, answering a few of the questions from their perspective as well.
Great, Stephanie. And I should have said this at the outset, we're going to be sharing, open source our responses, going forward, like we are, right here, these kind of draft responses. And so we want to encourage everyone to do the same, How about in Wisconsin? I think Buckley, Jim, you guys, what's going on there?
Well, we're working through with the State Economic Development Corporation, also through one of our senator's office to convene a group around the major strengths that we have here. We're trying to figure out also how the NSF engine program can feed into that as well. So building that consortium across the state to really attack this, to take advantage not only of our educational institutions that we have here, but also the really strong manufacturing base that we have as well. I don't know, Jim, do you have anything else to add?
Jim, I don't know if you're on mute if you're trying to talk. Okay, so let's talk about the what about Buckley? What about the substance of these responses to, the indicia of what a successful tech hub, that's really the overarching question, right? What should be, what are the program measures? What should it be working on? And so that's why I wanted to spend some time on the substance of this. And I mean, if you have something later, any of you can please share with me about your thoughts here, or Buckley, I wanted to see if you had any responses to what we have in here.
Yeah,
so far.
The thing that I like what you've done so far. I think what's going to be really important here is that the discussions that I've been in tend to emphasize on the tech side and forget the manufacturing side. I think even in the CHIPS Act, what you see is the realization that if we don't have a strong manufacturing base, you start losing that innovation cycle because you don't have any place to try it out. And then number two, get it to support it during scale-up phase. So I think having that manufacturing base as part of these hubs should be critical to whatever's considered.
Yeah, that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up. You can see in that second bullet there, we addressed it together. Yeah, it's just, you can't just have technology for technology's sake, right? It's got to be those key technologies that advance our priority industries. And if you look on and David, you can put this in the chat, the big six on our website there, we have the links to those 6 industries, the supply chain reports in those 6 industries listing there. So we're using that, those 6 as kind of the marker for, what should be our priority industries. So we're not saying that that's the exclusive list, but, it just can't be industry writ large, right? I mean, to have a priority. And so I want to keep emphasizing that point. Phil, you put this in the chat. Thank you for that. There's a webinar that EDA announced that Tuesday at 4 p.m. to share views about new funding opportunities.
CHIPS Act, not EDA.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Tell me what that is.
It's in. I put in the chat. It's the CHIPS.
Okay.
The CHIPS funding. So it's related to this. That's a lot of money. It's $40 billion.
Yeah.
So that's going to absorb a lot of oxygen in the system.
Yeah. Hey, David, can you, more to come. Can you put on the next slide there? This is the one summary slide. Oh, please.
We have a few hands that are raised as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see those. Please just call them out. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Alan Baker, would you like to start?
Good, thank you. So I'm located here in Virginia. The defense manufacturing community here is sort of the crucible for the formation of a response in this case. And I don't know to what extent other states are experiencing what I'm just about to talk about. One of the things that we're going to address here is what has become kind of a cottage industry in Virginia, and that is resilience. So simply because the principal tech hubs here are either right on the water, either on the ocean or on freshwater, and sea level rise is a critical problem that we have here. What it's spawned is a number of different non-industry based, government based resilience programs that are beginning to take all the oxygen out of the room with respect to the overall thrust of what this RFI is looking for. So we're taking this response as an opportunity to try to create an umbrella that addresses and brings under a larger kind of an umbrella the different resilience programs that we have here. And resilience has taken a variety of forms, but if your states are anything like ours, every major municipality and then counties and the state itself have a plethora of resilience programs that are overlapping some of our major missions in the tech hubs. So we're seeing a need to address that in our response.
That's awesome, Alan. I'm delighted you're on. And that first bullet on this slide right now, that includes resilience. So sustainable development is really the overarching paradigm, and the activity is integrated decision making, right? And that's what resilience is the concept around, and that's been very trendy and whatever, but that's a subset of that first bullet there. And so we can build that out and start using that word as a subset of activities, within sustainable development. And so thank you for highlighting that point, because that's part of the challenge of weaving together, existing initiatives, right, that are already out there. Some of them have different labels, and we can all speak to that, the substance of that challenge. Because what we're trying to do is get continuity in these multiple initiatives that are woven together. So thank you, Alan, for that. Yeah. And then who is next?
Yeah, and then Bernie Lynch, I know you had your hand raised. I don't know if you'd still like to chime in.
I think whenever I look at this slide, and Matt and I have talked and haven't been able to quite pull it together, but for the last 3 years, I've been working with the national and global leaders in both robotics and automation, which is Fanuc America and Rockwell Automation. Rockwell's based out of Wisconsin, but they're very much interested in connecting as the technology leaders at 65% and 85% of US concentration. They are the tech leaders for manufacturing, innovation. And so I know they've been, I've spent my last 3 years trying to get them involved with an MEP system and to bring sponsorship that they're offering in terms of how they'd want to be involved. But I mean, I've tried saying to them, Matt, at this point, there's a lot of national infrastructure they laid down. And so in large measure, what we're trying to do is figure out how does that fit in, because both are leading global companies. And so we're interested in, certainly we can be a part of supporting and sponsoring, because what they represent is their manufacturing partners and pretty much all of these industries that we've identified. So how do we do that, but not flatten, but strengthen? So we'll be looking for those ways. And I've talked to Matt about, how AMCC could feasibly play a role in that.
No, I appreciate that, Bernie. And we still have that ongoing intent. So let's keep at it. Well, Don Uford, I see you from NIST. What are you thinking about, comments on this RFI, what in terms of program design? I know you give a lot of deep thought to to all of this.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Number one, I think I need to be careful on the discussion here. I'm just going to say that I appreciate what's been shared today, and I think some of that feedback that's been shared is very appropriate. And I think since we're involved to some extent with it, I don't have a lot I should say at this point.
Got it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to put you in an awkward situation, but I did. So,
Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, David. So if you can, we have a few minutes left. Yeah, let me just open it up for questions and comments about. There's one is rallying your networks, right? And everyone's in a process of doing that. But again, if you can't rally your network to do it as a consortia, right, you can just do it as an organization, right? The point is to get input in, and it's a short timeline. And so we'll keep sharing this. Let's see, David, any other questions, comments? There's a new message there. Oh, Kevin, yeah, this is a good question. I was going to ask you, I see Kevin Ross from Accenture, big private, company, private partner. I was wondering if private entities like Accenture are going to have input in this RFI and what that input might be. Kevin?
Yeah, hey Matt, thanks. I'm still trying to kind of understand that fully and kind of what the relationship might be for this particular RFI. Happy to talk more about it and understand more about it. Again, like we've talked about before offline, is like, how do we make these connections between public and private? And I'm looking for all sorts of ways to do that. As I listen to these conversations, I see all these different types of resources, but I still see this gap, right, between the public and private sector that I'm still trying to look for what those pieces are in terms of how to connect them. So it's still kind of ongoing in my brain. I don't know if Accenture would reply directly to this RFI potentially, but maybe we would help support different regions in terms of helping them do assessments, prepare the RFI, helping bring information and data that might help different entities, respond in a way that's beneficial to their effort.
Well, that's great. I mean, maybe, we could be a conduit for, if you gave us input, then we could submit that from, one of our private partners has said X, so there's no one way to do it. It's a quick timeline, right? March 16th, what the substance is what matters, also, who it comes from, that matters too. But I think the substance is number one. We want to provide the best evidence there. So we're at the bottom of the hour, and that's the end of this 30-minute session. But we are available to discuss this. We'll continue to share what we're doing up until and including the time that we submit on behalf of AMCC. And encourage you all, to share what you're doing with the rest of us, or with us and the rest of us, whatever level of comfort that you have in there, because we want the best evidence of what's worked in the past to inform the program design going forward. So many thanks. David, thank you for running the slides. Thanks everybody for your keen attention to this, and we'll be in touch. Okay.